it's Lizzie. I hope you're having a good Monday and that you had fun at your homeschool event. I am going to start this first. Usually what I do is I have to make the videos shorter. So I'll give them to you in 2 or 3 videos, and then you just I'll number them when I upload them and you do them in order. So hopefully, if you're watching this one, it's number 1. And I'm going to start in the lesson book. We just had started playing in D position last week, and I think I had assigned you the, you already, no, you didn't know the 5-finger scale. So to work on the 5-finger scale on page 34, and then work on the cheers for D chords on page 35. And I feel like I said, if you had a good week and you had time, because I think we had a couple things we were reviewing, if you had a good week, you could start This Old Man, which is on page 36. And both of these, for the right hand and for the left hand, are both in D position. It moves where the melody is. So my guess is, because you guys usually practice really well, you've probably already done that page. So I'm going to assume you did it. If you did not do what it says at the bottom of the discovery, where it says transpose This Old Man to C position and G position, you can work on that this week. Both of them, we'd like to try practicing the transposing skill. I'd like to move on and give you a couple new songs this week in D position. So the next one that's on page 37 is Spring. And kind of an appropriate, we don't always get to play this in the springtime, depending on when a student reaches this book. But Mr. Vivaldi was known particularly for, I believe he was a violinist, and he wrote for strings primarily. He wrote a lot of famous string music. And one of the works, it's probably one of his most famous, that I figure if it's played on a TV commercial, that usually it's pretty famous. And you'll hear parts of this work called the Seasons, the 4 Seasons. You'll hear it pop up all over the place. So what happened was, for each season, so there are 4 seasons, and then for each season he wrote 3 movements, a fast, a slow, a fast. And so oftentimes you'll hear little bits of these famous melodies different places. So if I play this for you, which I'm going to, you might say, oh, I've heard that before. And I think he really tried to make this particular, this is for spring, and I think it kind of just sounds peppy and it makes you want to smile. So again, we're in D position, and your job is going to be to write in those starting notes. Make sure you're getting them correct. Maybe have mom check it or something when you write them, so write them in pencil, just in case. But I'm going to play this for you. You're going to notice that it's just kind of the main theme. If you would go online, which could be a really interesting thing for you to do, because I think you would enjoy listening to these. If you went on YouTube and listened to the spring portion of Vivaldi's 4 Seasons, you would, I think you'll hear this little theme, and then you'll see how he uses it in a bigger work. We've just got a teeny little snippet of the melody here. So this is part of Vivaldi's Spring. Oh, I should hold that. Nuts. Let me do take 2. And I didn't crescendo at the end. I probably should have. So the left hand is not going to be a problem. Unfortunately, the right hand just stays right in its position. You don't have to do any moving or crossing. So do remember our rule about the F's being sharp. If you realize that you're in D position, now part of what we're going to start working on is you're going to realize, okay, when I'm in D position, I need to set up with my 3-finger on an F sharp. And once you get used to doing that, you don't really necessarily have to pay attention to the sharps. Eventually, they're going to be written in what's called a key signature, which will be off to the side. But for now, because we're working on, Ranger says hello. I think somebody's doing something in one of the houses back over here. But anyway, all those F's that are sharped, the rule is, remember that if it's sharp, it's going to stay sharp to the bar line. Because you're in D position, all the F's are going to be sharped, because there's nothing that's got a natural next to it. So I'd like you to work on Spring. And then I would say let's skip the Pirate of the North Sea, and I'd like you to jump over to the Queen's Royal Entrance, which is quite fun to play. I think it's fun to play because it's one of those few times where you get to play full chords and it asks you to play loudly. And you do get to use your pedal part the way through. Here again, I'm really going to want you to write your starting notes in for those D major chords. And then probably get out your highlighter, because if you notice, let me move the camera, so now I'm on page 40. And if you look at this, you're going to see that already in that second measure, we've got a circled finger number there. And that tells us that our fingers are moving. And if you notice, the bottom note of our triad here is D. We're going down to a C, and then we're going back up to a D. So if we were together in the same room, I'd probably draw a pencil line between that D to the C, so you can see that we're just stepping down, and then you're stepping back up to D. So she does that in this, the Queen or whoever, I don't know exactly who wrote it, but you're going to see that pattern happen again when you get down to the second line, and then when you get over to this second page also, you're going to see that it's repeated. So it's a ABA format. Here you're going to come back to what, on the second page, you're going to come back to what's at the beginning. And you're going to notice, if you look at the whole page itself, let's look at just this first page, you're going to see that this A section is really predominantly chords. When we get down to here, you can see at measure 9 something happens, something changes, because see, we've got connected notes, we don't have chords, they're melody notes, and we've added the pedal. And so the style of that part changes quite a bit. But when you're playing those chords, and the other thing I really want you to notice is, do you see how this chord, this left-hand chord, this is the melody chord actually here. And you're going to want to make sure you keep that D all the way down to the bar line until you change, because oftentimes what people want to do is they'll play this and then they'll play this and they'll lift your left hand. But what we want to do is make that sound meld together, so it's going to sound even more full and more royal. You'll want to pay attention at the very end of this song. You're going to see again that we have some of these places where there are circled finger numbers, and the way you can tell what triad you're playing, you might want to take out your pencil before you play these, is write whatever the bottom note is what we call the triad. So notice this is going to be a D, this is going to start on F, then we step back down to E, and then we step back down to D. So it's going to go, notice we had an F sharp there because we were in a D position, and then they asked you, could you please cancel out that sharp and make it natural? Like that. So I'd like you to work on those two things in your lesson book to get started with that. And then your next video, I'm going to talk to you about some of the things in the other books.